The city sparkled beneath the rising sun, as if Abuja had been polished overnight. The glass towers along Central Business District reflected the orange hue of dawn, and from his penthouse balcony in Jobi, Ton Bello inhaled the quiet air of success. At 32, Ton had everything men his age only dreamed of. A thriving architecture firm, Bello Designs, that had handled contracts for the biggest estates in Metoma and Asakoro. A pearl-white Range Rover parked downstairs, still smelling new. His face appeared regularly in this day style, often beside captions like, "The city's brightest star." But what no one knew, what no one could ever know, was that Ton Bello didn't exist 10 years ago. At least, not this version of him. His phone buzzed. "Morning, superstar," said the smooth voice on the other end. Halima. She always sounded like champagne tasted, bubbly and expensive. "Morning, Halima," Ton replied, tightening his silk robe as he stepped back into his living room. "Dinner tonight. Blue Cabana. 8 sharp. Don't keep me waiting," she teased. He smiled faintly, but his eyes were distant as they lingered on the black and white photo tucked discreetly under a crystal paperweight on his desk. 4 young boys in threadbare uniforms, their faces lit with hope. Ton's hand unconsciously grazed the photo before he slid it under a stack of documents. The office was a whirlwind by 10 a.m. The Bello Designs headquarters sat on the top floor of an ultra-modern complex in Woods 2, with a panoramic view of the city. Glass walls, steel accents, the smell of coffee and ambition. "Morning, boss," his assistant, Chika, greeted, her acrylic nails clacking against her tablet as she followed him into the conference room. "Morning," Ton said, adjusting his cufflinks as a team of young architects straightened in their seats. "Presentation ready for the Asakoro project?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Chika replied, flashing her practiced smile. Everything in his world was polished, orderly, just as he liked it. And yet, as the meeting dragged on, Ton caught himself drifting. Thinking of Ibadan. Thinking of that small compound with the rusted zinc roof. Thinking of blood on his hands. He snapped back to reality when his phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't Halima. Unknown number. He let it ring out. Later that evening, Blue Cabana was a blur of dim lights, soft jazz, and the clinking of wine glasses. Halima swept in wearing an emerald green gown that hugged her curves, drawing stares from every corner of the room. "Turned," she said with that dazzling smile that could silence a room. "You're late." "Traffic," he lied, sliding into the booth opposite her. They talked, or rather, she talked, about her upcoming fashion line, about Dubai trips, about how everyone in Abuja seemed to be copying her style. Ton nodded when appropriate, smiling when expected, but his mind was far away. Then, midway through dessert, his phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. This time, a message followed. "I know who you really are, Ayamide." The fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the porcelain plate. Halima tilted her head. "Babe. You okay?" Ton forced a tight smile. Yeah, just walk." "Sorry." But inside, his chest was a storm. No one had called him Ayamide in almost a decade. No one in Abuja even knew that name. By the time he got home, the city had quieted, but Ton's mind was loud. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared at his reflection in the sliding glass doors leading to the balcony. Ayamide. The boy who used to run errands for the thugs in Oritomarin. The boy who learned early that the world didn't care about you unless you took what you wanted. The boy who, on one rainy night, made a choice that sent everything spiraling. His phone lit up again. Another message. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. Unity Fountain. Or everyone finds out." Ton's hands trembled slightly as he set the glass down. He had built walls, brick by brick, to bury his past so deep no one could find it. But somehow, someone had. And in Abuja, where reputation was currency, secrets were more dangerous than bullets. The next morning, the city was awake before the sun, but Ton barely noticed. He drove to Unity Fountain with his Range Rover's windows tinted dark, his jaw tight, and his pulse drumming in his ears. The fountain, usually alive with lovers taking selfies and joggers stretching, was quiet at that hour. And then he saw him, leaning casually against a rusted motorcycle, wearing a faded Arsenal jersey. Connor. His childhood friend. His brother, once upon a time. Turn bellow, Connor said, spitting the name like it tasted bitter. Or should I say? I am allayed. The sound of that old name cracked through him like thunder. What do you want, Connor? Ton asked, voice cold but trembling at the edges. Connor's eyes glinted, a predator scenting blood. Oh, we'll talk. About the boy you left behind. About the man you pretended to be. But first, he held up his phone, the screen flashing a photo, a younger Ton, blood on his hands, in that Ibadan alley, years ago. You and I need to discuss payment. Big payment. Or Abuja learns the truth. Abuja at night was a different city. The chaos of the day quieted into something sharp and tense, streetlights flickering over wide empty roads, the hum of generators replacing the roar of car horns. Chike drove through the silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Another message from the unknown number. We know who you are. Meet US. Midnight. JBI Lake. Chike's jaw tightened. He thought he had buried that part of himself. Lagos taught him how to run, Abuja taught him how to blend, but nowhere could erase the shadows of his past. When he got home to his apartment in Garki, Zora was waiting for him. Her hair was wrapped in a silk scarf, her long cardigan hanging loose, but her eyes were sharp, searching. You've been different, she said quietly. Since last week. Since that call. Chike tried to force a smile. Work stress. Nothing serious. But Zara wasn't buying it. Chike, don't lie to me. If you're in trouble, just tell me. Please. For a moment, the weight of the years pressed down on him. The years he spent in Lagos running scams with men who never forgave betrayal. The job that went wrong. The blood that followed. And then disappearing, changing his name, starting over in Abuja, thinking he could rewrite his story. Zora, he said, his voice low. If I tell you, you might not look at me the same. Her face softened. Try me. Joby Lake was still, the water reflecting the faint light of the moon. Chike parked near the far end, killed the engine, and stepped out. The sound of crickets filled the air. A man stepped from the shadows. Tall. Broad shoulders. A face Chike hadn't seen in 7 years. Chike breathed. He smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. Oh, so Abuja didn't make you forget, huh? You thought you could vanish, my guy? Change your name, new job, new girl, and boom, past gone. Chike swallowed hard. What do you want? He stepped closer, the gravel crunching under his boots. What do I want? The same thing we wanted in Lagos. The money. The cut you ran off with. You think we forgot? You think I forgot when they put bullets in Kolu because of you? The night felt colder. I don't have it anymore, Chike said. I used it to start over. To build something here. Isa's smile widened, cruel. Then you better figure out how to get it. Or that sweet life you're living. Over. And that girl. Zora. She'll find out who you really are, before we take her away. Chike barely remembered the drive back home. His hands trembled as he parked, his chest tight with panic. When he stepped inside, Zora was asleep on the couch, the TV still on. He stood there for a long moment, watching her, the only good thing in his new life. But in Abuja, secrets had a way of surfacing. He knew now there were only 2 choices. Run again. Or face the storm coming for him. The next morning, the city woke as if nothing had happened, the distant rumble of downfall buses, the chatter of roadside sellers, the smell of akara frying somewhere down the street. But Chike felt the shift in the air. Abuja wasn't safe anymore. And the shadows of Lagos were closing in fast. By the time the sun sank behind the Abuja skyline, painting the streets in amber and deep blue, David sat alone on the balcony of his Wool's apartment, a glass of untouched whiskey sweating in his hand. The city felt quieter that evening, as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make a choice. He'd spent the day dodging calls. From his boss, from childhood friends, and, most painfully, from Zara. He knew what she wanted, answers. And maybe, deep down, he wanted to give them. But how do you explain to someone you love that your entire life has been built on a lie? Hours earlier, a message had arrived on his phone. From a number he hadn't seen in years. Unknown, it's time. We know where you are. Meet us at the old warehouse. Midnight. The same warehouse where it had all begun. David had never told anyone the full story of that night, 10 years ago. Back when he was a reckless 20-year-old, desperate for quick money and surrounded by the wrong kind of people. A heist gone wrong. One man dead. A family destroyed. And David, the lucky one, vanished into the shadows, helped by a powerful politician who owed his father a favor. His name changed. His records erased. A clean slate, at least on paper. But guilt doesn't respect clean slates. At exactly 11:50 p.m., he drove down the dim, deserted road leading to the warehouse, his heart thudding like a drumline in his chest. Abuja's skyline glimmered behind him, a sharp contrast to the darkness ahead. When he stepped out of the car, the night air was thick with tension. And then he saw them. 3 men. One leaning casually against a black SUV, another smoking, and the third, older, sharper, watching David with a gaze that sliced through the night. David, or should I say, Daniel, the older man said, his voice calm but cold. David swallowed. What do you want from me? The man stepped closer, the gravel crunching under his boots. 10 years you've been hiding. 10 years you've been pretending to be someone you're not. But deaths don't disappear, Daniel. They wait. From the corner of his eye, David caught movement, another figure stepping out from the shadows. His stomach dropped when he saw her. Zora. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with betrayal and confusion. You lied to me, she whispered, her voice shaking. All this time, who are you, David? Or Daniel. David's throat tightened. Words tangled on his tongue. He wanted to tell her everything. How every smile, every shared moment had been real. How he had wanted to come clean 1,000 times. But how do you explain a past soaked in blood? Zora. Save it, she snapped, her voice cracking under the weight of her anger and hurt. The older man smiled thinly, savoring the chaos. You want out of this? It'll cost you. And next time, we won't be asking. He turned, signaling his men, and just like that, they disappeared into the darkness, leaving David alone in the silence. Alone with Zora, whose tears glistened under the flickering streetlight. Was anything real? She whispered, her voice breaking. David took a step forward, then froze when she stepped back. Everything, he said, his voice low and raw. I swear to you, Zora, everything was real. But her eyes, once full of love and trust, were now distant, clouded by betrayal. In the days that followed, Abuja felt different. Colder. The same city, but sharper, heavier, like it was holding a secret. Zora stopped answering his calls. Mutual friends avoided his gaze. And David. David drowned himself in work, in silence, in memories of what could have been if his past hadn't clawed its way back into the light. But sometimes, as he drove through the city at night, past the neon lights of Metoma lounges or the crowded markets of Woos, he caught himself thinking about her. Wondering if, someday, she'd understand. Wondering if forgiveness was even possible for someone like him. And in those quiet, sleepless hours, he realized the cruel truth: no matter how fast you run, the past always knows your name.